But listen, this wasn't exactly the plan. We weren't gonna come to this state park. We were going to a state park in West Virginia. Hey, I'm Bill Marion, and this is A Nose for Life. Let me explain how this whole thing started. Carolyn and I were heading to Cooper's Rock State Forest in West Virginia. Why? Honestly, because we haven't been to that part of West Virginia, and Carolyn wanted to check it out. By the way, in case you didn't know, West Virginia has a unique shape. This part of West Virginia is actually east of Virginia. I know, mind blown, right? But we're heading to this part of West Virginia, and the route we chose from Harrisonburg, Virginia goes through a part of Maryland. Carolyn and I have driven through Maryland on our way to make other videos for the channel, but we've never spent any time in Maryland. On this trip, we learned that Maryland is an amazing Appalachian mountain destination. More about these mountains later. If you've watched a lot of our videos over the past 3 years, you already know that we spend a lot of time exploring the Allegheny Mountains in West Virginia. We love going to West Virginia for a real mountain view experience, and that was the original plan. And that's where we began Cooper's Rock State Park, West Virginia, by way of Maryland.
Attention shoppers.
We're sharing this adventure in 2 parts. There was just too much to cram into one video.
Here we go!
So you've heard me say this before, every state park, every national park, well, you kind of have a hot dog stand. That's what Walt Disney called it, a focal point in your park. And here, that focal point is the Overlook. Now, Carol and I have been to thousands of overlooks over the course of our adventures, and, well, you would think it'd be more than an overlook, but it's actually a pretty big deal. Come on, I'll show you. So the walk from the parking lot to the Overlook is nothing. I think it was 500 feet is what the sign said, but it's all stone that you're walking on, so it's an easy walk. And the Overlook is handicap accessible, which is great. You know, it reminds me of Savage Gulf State Park, a video I made a few years ago. It also reminds me a little bit of Prentice Cooper there in Chattanooga. So yeah, and it's familiar. Why? Because we're up on a plateau, very similar plateau to the Cumberland Mountains down in southeast Tennessee.
The terms Allegheny Plateau and Cumberland Plateau both refer to the dissected plateau lands lying west of the main Appalachian Mountains. These are historical terms to describe regions, but there are no strict boundaries dividing one region from another within the Appalachian Mountains. Sometimes people will leave a comment on my videos about the Appalachian Mountains, providing insight to the geological boundaries and even explaining that some mountain chains on the East Coast don't even belong to the Appalachian Mountains.
You're nothing to me now.
And this is true, geologically. But historically, these mountains have been grouped together by the people who live there. Now, this conversation may not seem like a big deal, but it is, kind of. Well, it means that we're not all on the same page when it comes to defining the Appalachian Mountains. This summer, I'm planning to make an in-depth video on the subject, if I have the nerve to do it. See, you might think a video like that would be a total bore, but trust me, there's a bit of controversy. Here's another way of thinking about it. What does it really mean that we're defining and redefining boundaries based on geology? I mean, it sounds great. I love science, and geology is fascinating. fascinating. Over the past few years of exploring the Appalachian Mountains, I've learned more geology than I ever imagined. But there are a handful of experts that don't think the field of geology is quite ready for the task. I'll probably lose subscribers over that last sentence, and that's why I'm nervous about making that video. And keep in mind, I'm not an expert, I just think it's a fascinating discussion.
You know, in all of our travels, I don't think we've ever seen a sign that warns of snakes. I've never seen that. It's kind of interesting. Okay, for a second, think about every state park you've ever visited in your life. There's just things that you gotta have. You know, picnic tables. You gotta have picnic tables. You gotta have pavilions that you can reserve for your family reunions. And you need some kind of a trading post or some kind of place where you can get supplies for those things that you left at home that you even made a list for and somehow you still left them at home. You gotta have stuff to do. This area is all about walking trails and skiing trails. A lot of cross-country skiing around here. You're at a pretty high elevation. So like I said earlier, state parks normally have a pavilion of some kind that you can rent or just reserve. The sign here says that you can reserve it. It has a telephone number there, and I'll look at some information and put it in the links below. But look how awesome this is. This is really nice. This isn't your average state park pavilion right here. This is really, really nice. You got grills on the outside to where you can grill up your hamburgers. Carolyn and I are starving. That sounds really good right now. But this is just an amazing pavilion. There's a couple of them here. So if you're in the region and you're having a family reunion or something, I'm telling you, this is where you want to be. So this park was established back in 1936. It was built by the CCC, which a lot of the state parks, a lot of the national parks, well, they were built by the CCC. The CCC, in case you didn't know it, isn't some kind of a rock band in the 90s. The CCC is actually a work program developed back in the 1930s to put people back to work during the Great Depression. FDR was trying to use anything to get the economy going. It's debatable as to whether or not those programs were actually a success or contributed to getting out of the Great Depression, but those programs were a pretty big morale booster to the entire country. They constructed all this, and it's a pretty big deal. And we've covered the CCC in other videos about a lot of the state parks and national parks that we visit. There's always a marker commemorating the CCC. But the work that these men did, well, it's still pretty impressive, and we get to enjoy it today. They left a pretty big legacy. In a lot of our videos, we're taking you out in the middle of nowhere, but this isn't like that. You're not too far from civilization at all. So when you're hiking in a 300-year-old hemlock forest, well, guess what? It gets darker in here quicker. Carolyn wants to see this other waterfalls. But I just hope we get back before it gets dark.
Far be it from me to mislead someone from watching our videos, but there was nothing scary about our unplanned trip to Maryland.
Stairs.
That being said, you really need to watch part 2 because Mountain Maryland is amazing. We had a blast making that video and we can't wait to share it. Part 2 will be out in just a few days unless you're watching this in the future, in which case you're a time traveler and thanks for watching. And if you are a time traveler, here's a card in the top corner of your screen where you can click for part 2. And even if you're not a time traveler, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure you click the like and subscribe button, and it really helps when you share our videos as well. My name is Bill Marion and this is A Nose for Life. Hey, while you're here, watch one of these other videos.
But this is something we're both predicting. In the summertime, this place is going to be packed. We're in the early parts of May, first 2 weeks of May. This place is busy.